Goeiemiddag almal, good afternoon everybody. Ek wil begin deur graag net vir al die AfriForum lede baie dankie te sê. Natuurlik is alles wat AfriForum doen slegs moontlik omdat ons lede het wat ons ondersteun. For the rest, we will be speaking in English so that we can also reach a wider audience. So this media conference is about saving lives. It's about giving citizens access to a medicine that can help them recover and save their lives. It is about giving medical professionals every tool possible in the fight against COVID-19 so that they can also honor the oath they took. Now, when considering the use of a medicine, the following must be considered according to the World Health Organization. Firstly, the effectiveness of the medicines, or evidence towards the effectiveness of the medicine. Secondly, of course, safety, resources, equity, acceptability, and feasibility. In the limited time we have available today, I will mainly focus on effectiveness and on safety. So, in a meta-analysis conducted by Dr. Andrew Hill from Liverpool University, he states in the conclusion, this meta-analysis of 18 randomized controlled trials in 2,282 patients showed a 75% improvement in survival, faster time to clinical recovery, and signs of a dose-dependent effect of viral clearance for patients given ivermectin versus control treatment. 75% improvement in survival, ladies and gentlemen. There was a second meta-analysis conducted by the evidence-based medicine consultancy in the UK, also a company that does some work for the WHO, and they state the following. The evidence from meta-analysis show that ivermectin treatment may reduce the risk of death among people with COVID-19 by an average of 68%. The evidence also suggests that it probably leads to fewer patients deteriorating if they receive ivermectin compared with them not getting ivermectin. Then there's also some comments about prophylaxis. With regard to prophylaxis among those with high exposure, the evidence shows that prevention with ivermectin may reduce the risk of getting infected with COVID-19 by an average of 86%. Now, a quick remark on the safety. If you've read anything about ivermectin, you cannot be anything else than to be completely convinced of the safety of ivermectin. We know that ivermectin was used extensively in Africa and other tropical regions against river blindness, but you can also use some other resources to look at the safety of ivermectin. So you can, for instance, go to the VG Access database of the WHO, and we quickly did a search there today. And according to this VG Access database, and this database, you can get information from 1992 regarding ivermectin. Ivermectin's been used for a very long time. It's been used from 1987. So according to this database, from 1992, the adverse events reported for ivermectin are 16 deaths and approximately 4,673 adverse events. Now this is in a time span of 29 years. Now we can look at another medicine, remdesivir, also currently used in the treatment of COVID-19. And of course, reporting on remdesivir only started in 2020 because that's when remdesivir became available. Now, according to this same database, for a period of less than 1 year, you have 417 deaths and approximately 5,463 adverse events. And then I will only discuss a single real-world example. And this is from the state or the country of Peru, which consists of 25 states. And I'm going to start with a number. 2,191,247. So approximately 2.2 million, that's the number. That's the number of ivermectin dosages distributed in 9 states of Peru having ivermectin treatment in a condensed time period. That is the amount of dosages distributed in 9 out of that 25 states. Now, there can be no better proof of the safety of ivermectin with COVID-19 than this example where we know that there's been a distribution of millions of dosages. If we specifically look at this 9 states where ivermectin was distributed in a condensed time period, and they actually used the military to do this, in each of these 9 states, excess deaths peaked within 11 days after the ivermectin program start date. Excess deaths then dropped by a mean of 74% at 30 days after day of peak deaths. Now, we can also compare 24 states in Peru with 1 state where they delayed the treatment with ivermectin. So for the 24 states, which of course includes 8 of the 9 states with the condensed program. So in this 24 states with early ivermectin treatment, excess deaths dropped by 59% at 30 days and 75% at 40 days after the day of peak deaths. But in Lima, the capital city of Peru, where ivermectin treatment only began 4 months after the initial pandemic surge in April, excess deaths dropped by only 25%, 30 days, and 25% still after 40 days after the day of peak deaths. Now, this is a difference when you compare the 24 states with early treatment and the 1 state with later treatment. If you look at 30 days after peak deaths, there's a 29% difference between the states with early treatment and the 1 state without. And if you look at 45 days after day of peak death, that is a difference of 50% in peak deaths. Now, if you are really interested in understanding more about the Peru situation and what happened there, you can look for the journal article. It's currently preprint by Jamie Quintero, if you want to know more about that. So, in our minds, there is no doubt that ivermectin can save many lives and are key in our fight against COVID-19. I will now hand over to Willie Spies on my right-hand side to handle the legal matters from AfriForum side, and maybe I can just quickly also at least introduce the members of the panel, which I failed to do at the beginning. So next to me is Hannes Strydom from the Pharma Valu-apteekgroep, and on the left is Gerard Wagenaar, the legal representative of Hannes. But Willie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Barend. It's really a privilege to join you in this conference and to give some background about the process that we as lawyers have undertaken on behalf of AfriForum and the parties who joined AfriForum in this matter. Just to give you a big or a quick overview over the process so far, AfriForum actually started this legal battle early this year during January when we obtained a senior counsel opinion on the issue of ivermectin and the question whether SAPRA was actually doing the right thing by insisting that they do have a controlling authority about the distribution of this, what's been referred to by many as a wonder drug. Obviously, it's not our duty to decide on the details of the drug, but what we do think is necessary for a civil rights organization as AfriForum, being my client, is to ensure that the Constitution is respected, that the law is respected, and when regulators regulate, that they do so in accordance with their rights and their duties. That is our duty, that's our primary function. And we live in a society, well, I think it's not a local phenomenon, it's all over the world, where regulators tend to overstep their boundaries. They tend to take on too much control over issues that are much better controlled by individuals who can make free choices in the first regard. An individual can consent to certain treatments whenever an individual falls ill. And more importantly, when we deal with a dangerous disease, then obviously professionals, and by professionals I mean medical doctors and pharmacists, are the people who are, in terms of our Constitution at least, allowed to practice and to not be unreasonably limited in the way they practice. So whenever you sit with a crisis that we are experiencing at the moment, where there's a worldwide pandemic, people are dying, people are in dire straits, and given our specific South African circumstances where vaccination is not freely available yet, then we need to look at emergency measures. And if within this emergency situation a regulator then comes to the fore and acts as a gatekeeper to withhold medication that could save lives from the public, and stating a whole range of legislative provisions on which they rely in order to withhold treatment from people, then it is necessary for a civil rights institution like AfriForum to get involved, and that was the reason why we undertook this urgent application. The application was initially brought on behalf of AfriForum together with 3 other parties. The first applicant was Dr. George Kutsia, a medical practitioner, who absolutely believed in the research that was done internationally about the value of ivermectin, which Barend also highlighted. Also 3 patients, and sadly the one patient, Mr. Fred Du Plessis, passed away before the matter was brought before court. And the purpose of this application was merely an urgent application that was due to be heard on the 2nd of February this year, in order to compel SAPRA to allow the doctor to treat his patients according to his professional judgment at that stage. The urgent application was actually overtaken by an initiative that was then taken by SAPRA, and we believe it was done on legal advice, but be that as it may, that's a separate debate for the court to decide on finally. But SAPRA then undertook what they referred to as a program of compassionate controlled access. And this compassionate controlled access was actually just a brand or a label that was put onto an existing process that is already recognized by SAPRA in terms of Section 21 of the Medicines and Medical Substances Act. So this label that was given actually labeled the process as compassionate. Unfortunately, the experience that my client had over the past month was that there wasn't really anything compassionate about that program, because people were still dying, people were still being deprived of access to ivermectin, and you would typically find that in the corporate hospitals, the big private hospitals, the hospital authorities were not prepared to take the calculated risk to allow the treatment of patients with this substance. And furthermore, in government public hospitals, obviously, the public hospitals just accepted the word of SAPRA with regards to their decisions that they made. And interestingly so, and sadly so, the Western Cape government and the Western Cape Department of Health actually undertook this issue to, in so much words, tell AfriForum and the desperate patients that are being cared for in their hospitals that there's no way they would allow people to take ivermectin in their hospitals. So as I said, nothing compassionate about the compassionate program. But be that as it may, the process took its run. We did not proceed with the urgent matter. Instead, we had been to the urgent court, and the urgent court granted an interim order that actually just allowed for the program to be recognized and to be given a chance. And that's where we stand at this stage with the application. Apart from the AfriForum application, there were also further court applications launched. One was launched by the ACDP, a political party, the African Christian Democratic Party, who attacked the constitutional validity of the legislation. A third application was brought by an organization known as I Can Make a Difference, under the leadership of a doctor from KZN, Dr. Katrada, who firmly believes in the value of ivermectin as a treatment, and who believes that they should be allowed to take on the issue. And then in the fourth place, and I like to refer to our friend and colleague and pharmacist, Mr. Hannes Strydom, according to his previous claim to fame being a Springbok rugby player who took part in the 1995 World Cup. But in true 1995 World Cup fashion, I think Mr. Strydom managed to score a try late in the second half of this court battle, and it's actually the purpose of this conference to inform you about this late try late in the second half of the game that was scored by Pharma Valu and Mr. Hannes Strydom. When they found in their preparation for a separate legal challenge that there was one critical element of the regulations that was missing. SAPRA, as I said, is very keen to regulate. And SAPRA is very keen to insist on what they refer to as the registration of ivermectin before it can be administered. And SAPRA actually made no secret of it that before they will register ivermectin, a whole range of trials need to be done, a whole range of expensive studies first need to be done until this registration process can be done. But in their preparation, and Hannes can elaborate on that further, Hannes and his legal team actually discovered that the Medicines and Medical Substances Act has got a very specific provision regarding medicines, and it makes perfect sense. Every single substance that are being used in medicines is not due for registration automatically. And that's why you do get lots of treatments in pharmacies and even in supermarkets that are not registered medicines. For a medicine to be a registrable medicine, it is necessary for the regulator, the CEO of the regulator, to publish a notice in the Government Gazette. And that notice is known as a so-called call-up notice. So, well, we accepted that SAPRA, being so sure of themselves, probably went through all these formalities when they decided that ivermectin had to be registered. But Hannes and his team actually went all the way, and they insisted, and they approached SAPRA asking them to show proof that ivermectin is in fact due for registration. And I think I will leave it to Hannes to tell us the rest of the story, but the interesting thing is that it appears from the application that they launched earlier this week that was not the case, that SAPRA failed to invite the public to apply for the registration, and that as a result of that, the whole issue of the so-called illegality of ivermectin as a substance is actually, I'm hesitant to use the word fake, but to a very large extent, SAPRA stands on a very weak basis in their insistence that ivermectin needs to be registered, because they failed to do the very first step of registration process for more than 30 years, because ivermectin is around for more than 30 years already. They failed during this 30 years to publish the notice inviting the public to register ivermectin. And with that being said, we believe that the whole legal challenge is now on a totally different footing. The whole we actually changed gears, to put it that way. AfriForum filed a notice of amendment, and the matter will now be dealt with from here on to a very large extent by an attack that will be spearheaded by our former Springbok rugby player. I would like to introduce Hannes and just ask him to elaborate a bit.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to give our side as well of the story. I'd like to thank AfriForum for the opportunity and for all their support, and also for Gerard Wagenaar, my attorney, that also helped us. We as a pharmacist, just to explain the dilemma that we are sitting in at the moment, we are part of the primary healthcare system in South Africa, and we're in a national crisis at the moment. And we as pharmacists at this stage cannot dispense or give any person ivermectin at this stage, which we feel can be a solution to a problem, seeing that we are in a national crisis at this stage. Ivermectin, as we've known worldwide, has been authorized for parasitic infections. It can be used for scabies, head lice, all those type of treatments. It can be used, and it was proved safe for human use in those conditions. And it has been proved safe in America, in the United States, and in Canada, and all those countries. So it's actually been a safe drug. It's not a dangerous drug, although a lot of people said that the dosages are too dangerous or too high. But in total, since the year 2011, about 80 million people have been treated with ivermectin worldwide. So it's not a drug that hasn't been used. It's not something that has caused people their death. And it's really had worse side effects for the people. The reason why we are here is to get relief, to be able to give the ivermectin out, where we feel patients do need it. We feel patients do need definitely to have the medication. There's no alternative at this stage, seeing that the inoculations and all those are taking too long to get the people lying. I've seen patients dying in hospital, with hospitals not allowing, according to their rules, to dispense or to give the person the ivermectin itself. And I've seen patients, and I've had to deal with families, comforting them why we couldn't get the medicines to them. The hospitals bluntly just refused actually to have the medication given to the patients. That's why we as a pharmacist are here, to try and find relief. And AfriForum and Gerard Wagner has done a lot of work for us to be able to get this ivermectin to the patients, much needed. There's no other alternative at this stage that we can prove that really helps. And then also, ivermectin is subject to registration in terms of the Medicines Act. In the premises, ivermectin does not have to be registered at this stage. And that's where we as pharmacists stand, and that's where I as a pharmacist stand. And that's why I've got the legal team in with Gerard Wagner and AfriForum. And I'd like to thank them for their support, because at the end, we are fighting for a person's life, and we can save one person's life by giving them the right medication that might save their life. 75% is a much better rate than a 0% revival rate. So that is what we're fighting for. Pharmacists are part of the primary healthcare system, and we would like the authority and the right to be able to help our patients. And that's where we come from, and that's why we're seeking a relief at this stage.
Thank you very much to everybody. Maybe one or two concluding remarks before we take questions. And that is, Hannes also mentioned dosing. If you are still stuck with ivermectin needed to be administered at dangerous doses, you are literally stuck at the study from April 2020, and that was a study conducted in a lab. So it's since been proven that ivermectin can be effective at dosages that are safe for humans. If we want to conduct some studies, sensible studies will be to conduct dosing studies so that we can determine which doses will actually be best. But you cannot conduct dosing studies if you cannot use the medicine. And yeah, I think, and maybe we should just say in the end what it would mean practically. If we can just in practical terms say, should we be able to get this declaratory order? How will it practically work? Because the one thing we did not yet mention is what is the implications of ivermectin being a Schedule 3 medicine.
Thank you, Barend. As I said, what AfriForum has described as this breakthrough or this turn of events at a very late stage is, as I said, can be described as a try late in the second half of the game. The game and the legal game is not yet over. The legal game will be over after the court ruled on this whole issue. And it's always dangerous. Well, it's not only dangerous, it's not correct for me to preempt what the courts will finally do. This matter will be argued in court on the 29th, the 30th and the 31st of March. The date has been set down by the presiding judge that has been tasked with the duty to hear all these matters together as one. So the court will have the final say, and the final whistle of this game will then blow on the 31st of March. And hopefully the developments would make it easier for the applicants to succeed. The question is ivermectin illegal, as has been alleged by many so far? The fact, and that question can be answered simply, it is not illegal. In fact, it's already listed as a Schedule 3 medicine in the Medicines Act. It's been printed there. It's true. It's always been like that. And being a Schedule 3 medicine, we all know that the different schedules of medicine requires different levels of care. With regards to a Schedule 3 medicine, it means that the medical doctor can prescribe those medicines. The second question is whether it's possible for pharmacists to sell those medicines. Yes, they can sell them. And Section 14(1) of the Act says that the sale of medicines is only prohibited if they are prohibited in the Act, and it's only prohibited if registration was required and not done. But as I said, we found that registration was never required by SAHPRA. The call-up notice to request that was never published, which totally turned the ship in a totally different direction. It's a legal medicine, it's listed in the Act, and in the absence of a call for registration, there's no further need to legalize the medicine. It can be administered as we understand the Act, and that's more or less what all the different parties will ask the court by the end of March when we are in court to debate this matter.
Okay, thank you, Willie. Any questions from the floor? Yes.
Good day. My name is Arissa. I'm here from Netwerk 24. We just want to know that the issue surrounding this has been that ivermectin for personal use or use for people is not in our country. It's not available in our country. So does this then allow compound pharmacies to make ivermectin for this use?
Do you want to answer on?
The dosages are being prepared and it's also being regulated. What we as pharmacists have seen up to now is it's been imported illegally from countries all over the world. The dosages, the constitution, the composition, we cannot vouch for, whereas we can rather legalize, make sure it's compounded under the correct conditions, under the right strength, and also under the right amount of milligram per kilogram, because we get dosage according to the weight of each patient. So each patient's dosage depends on their weight. And with importing medicines on the grey market and the black market that we've seen at this stage, for first thing, prices are being rocketed sky high. People are being ripped off. People that are in need of essential medication cannot afford it. Now they've got to buy illegal medicines coming from overseas. We've seen about 126 million rand of ivermectin being confiscated at the airports and at the harbours. And that is a type of illegal thing. Let's rather make it legal, compounded in South Africa, under the right conditions, under the right circumstances, give the patients the right dosage, make sure they don't underdose, make overdose, and then just guide them in according to it. We have got, as pharmacists, no other alternative to help them. Let's have it controlled.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I can perhaps just mention that the one benefit of the urgent application that we did bring and the pressure that was put on SAHPRA so far that led to the Compassionate Controlled Access Program is that there are 6 licenses being issued for the import of ivermectin already. So if you go to SAHPRA's website and you Google or you search on ivermectin, you will see that since these legal processes started, SAHPRA has actually authorized the import of ivermectin by 6 suppliers so far. So we've managed to crack the iceberg, to put it that way. We've made the first breakthrough, and hopefully this final push will open up the market so that the medicine becomes freely available and that people are being treated, especially if the third wave of this pandemic reaches us within the next month or 2.
Maybe just one final concluding remark. You will also find that a study was done on the quality of ivermectin, and it's when you look at that study, the 2 samples that they got from local compounding pharmacies was actually 100% correctly compounded and pure. So just to give a compliment to our local compounding pharmacies, and of course, like Hannes said, this is about making effective treatment available and affordable. I mean, we need to consider South African circumstances. We cannot take decisions the same as the US or Europe are taking because it's simple. We are not the United States or Europe. Thank you for everybody that attended. Thank you for everybody that followed us online. Baie dankie vir almal wat ons aanlyn gevolg het en weer eens baie dankie vir al ons lede wat dit moontlik maak. Dankie almal. Thank you everybody.